This is the Rookie Big Board Rookie Profile Series. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined by John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. This is the Tank Bigsby Rookie Profile. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. We are about halfway through the Rookie Profile Series, so still a lot of videos coming your way. If you are not watching on YouTube, or if you are, make sure you head on over to patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Get in on all of the action. These profiles are just scratching the surface, and the rookie draft guide drops this month. We are excited for it, John, and we're excited to talk about Tank Bigsby, the running back out of Auburn.
I am excited. He's a very tough analysis this year. If you love high school sports and you've been tracking the recruiting process, Tank Bigsby has been on the radar for a real long time. But unfortunately, Matt, he went to a program that has been a little bit underperforming in the last 3 years. I wonder how much his career arc would be different if he went to a school that was 10-2 or 11-1 and that could dominate. Auburn hasn't been great while Tank has been there. In high school, he was a 4 or 5-star prospect. It kind of depends on the scouting service that you're looking at, Matt. And he put together some prolific numbers. As a senior, Matt, he rushed for 1,636 yards with 27 touchdowns. As a junior the year before, Matt, he was even better with 2,221 yards and 22 touchdowns. He was actually the Class AA Georgia Player of the Year as a junior. So we're talking about a young man that has been in the spotlight for a while. In 2020, he enrolls at Auburn in January. So he gets on campus very early. And Matt, he has what I like in the profile from a production standpoint. He immediately contributes as a freshman. He had 138 carries, but more importantly, 834 yards, Matt, and 5 touchdowns. Only caught 11 passes for 84 yards, but as a freshman, Matt, that is incredibly impressive as an 18-year-old or 19-year-old young man. He was named SEC Freshman of the Year, first-team freshman All-SEC, and second-team freshman All-American. So for those early breakout people, they're going to really like Tank Bigsby's freshman year. In 2021, he put together his best season, Matt. It was the only time he exceeded 1,000 yards on the ground. He had 233 carries and has scored 10 times. So what we see with him next year is that he can handle the bulk of the workload. He is a stud running back with a big body that can carry the football. He was PFF College All-SEC honorable mention and academic honor roll. And as for the Tigers, he won the Pat Sullivan Award as the team's Offensive Player of the Year. In 2022, Matt, this program had a lot of problems. They made some coaching changes. It hasn't worked out. They fired their coach in the middle of the year last year, and really the offense around Tank really collapsed. He had 179 carries, which was okay, 970 yards and 10 touchdowns. He left me wanting more watching the game tape. It was a good year, but it definitely wasn't a great year. Not what I expected. He had a career best 30 receptions, so that's nice on the stat sheet, and he showed us some promise as a pass catcher. PFF named him third team All-SEC. When he finished his career at Auburn, Matt, he's 7th all-time rushing, and he had 1,300-yard games. I do like Tank Bigsby. I don't love him, and I had higher expectations of him. But there are some real highlights. Matt, what does your film analysis say of Tank Bigsby?
You know, John, the way that you're describing your feeling towards Tank Bigsby, I think is a similar experience that a lot of folks have who have been watching him for multiple years now, because most folks have known about Tank Bigsby. You mentioned he was a high recruit and he broke out early. So from the Devy side of things, we have multiple years of tape to watch, which I think can be helpful when evaluating a prospect. For me, the first thing I want to mention about Tank Bigsby, especially through the fantasy football lens, is that he has high end acceleration. When he's given space, he has home run play potential, which I think is a huge upside for fantasy football purposes, right? So you see that downfield acceleration, he can get himself going at a great speed for somebody who is, going to come in probably about between 210 and 220 at the NFL combine, I expect. I love Bigsby's contact balance. He displays the ability to work within the A gap, especially because of that contact balance. He is not afraid to take on SEC defenders. He has quick, shifty feet. I think that's probably the most underrated trait for Tank Bigsby. I think it allows him to be effective in tight space here. Sometimes you'll hear the expression, effective in the phone booth, right? So in a tight, crowded space, Tank Bigsby can make guys miss. And he has that ability, that quickness to beat linebackers to the edge as well. So as I'm watching Tank Bigsby tape, yes, I want more of those home run plays, but I see examples of them, and I see that he can win in between the tackles, and I see that he can win off tackle, right? So I'm seeing a lot of potential when it comes to Tank Bigsby. The biggest mark against him is going to be his ability to create space on his own. That doesn't show up on tape. And I think that's that feeling of wanting more, right? But you have to understand the context that, John, you set up very nicely. Auburn has been a dumpster fire over the last 2 years with Brian Harsin. And Tank Bigsby, for his credit, has stuck out and stayed in that program because he tempted with flirted with the transfer portal this last year. He stayed with it. He believed in the team. And John, what I think says so much about Tank Bigsby and his tape is the SEC defenses knew Tank Bigsby was getting the ball, right? Over and over and over again. If Tank was on the field, he was getting the ball. That led to loaded boxes, right? That's loaded boxes against a subpar SEC offensive line. So I think Bigsby did a lot with a little. And he has the ability, he's one of the rare players where you do have to use your imagination a little bit and project forward, right? He is an example of all the stars aligning to be a better pro than he was college player. These guys do exist, and it does happen sometimes, and it's usually in the environment that we're describing here with Tank. So that inability to create space is concerning for me, but I think there's a valid reason why. The other slight concern I have with Tank is that I'm not sure that physicality will hold up against against NFL front sevens consistently. Like, I don't think he's a 250 to 300 carry guy in the NFL, but I do think he could be a 250 total touch guy, which is going to put him in a pretty nice situation if he can be a starting running back on an NFL roster. So, John, I'm kind of setting up the stats a little bit, but relative to every challenge I've just, lobbed up here, he has put up solid stats.
Matt, when I plugged him into my model in early January, I was actually surprised, and he looks nice in my model, better than I thought and better than what I thought the film showed. And I've learned over the last month to separate him and his skills from the program at Auburn. You mentioned Harspen's offense. I would say their offensive line wasn't very good. So there are factors here with Tank Bigsby. The first thing that I think scouts will notice, and I did also, Matt, he's listed at 6'0", 208. If he shows up at 215, Matt, SEC bump, big back, the NFL is going to like him a lot more than people are thinking about. They're going to see an SEC runner with a very nice production profile and size. When you look at the numbers here, Matt, 2,900 career rushing yards. That's a solid number in a tough conference with a poor team around him. Name a quarterback or an offensive lineman on the Auburn Tigers, people, just to give you an idea of what the teammate score is. Look at the yards per carry, 5.4. Yeah, I'd like it to be 5.5, but if you're getting hit a yard behind the line of scrimmage often, Matt, in 7-man boxes, you're not going to have a huge yards per carry. Scrimmage yards, 1,283. I would like it at 1,500, but Auburn isn't a great passing game. They never, as I mentioned, he only had 1,000 yard season. So all things considered, that's pretty nice. It's not great, but it's nice. But the scrimmage yards, Matt, With only 1,283, he had 25% of the team's scrimmage yards. So it gives you an idea the Tigers aren't moving the football much down the field. And that number, career reception, 62. He hits my benchmark of 50. He's not Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's adequate enough in the passing game, Matt, on screens, dump offs. You can put him in the flat. He's a 3-down back, I believe, from day one. What should fantasy footballers know about Tank Bigsby?
John, I think the NFL values Tank Bigsby. I do expect him to be a day 2 late selection, 51 to 102. So the key with him is what offense does he land in? I know that sounds simple, right? But in that range, you may have the opportunity to be the lead back in an NFL offense. There's plenty of rosters that need somebody here. So it'll be really interesting to see where Bigsby ends up. I do think his rookie draft ADP will land in that early second round, 201 to 204. So I think there's going to be some nice value there with Tank. If you don't want to pay up for a tier 1 running back, maybe you don't want to pay up for somebody else who's getting more consensus hype, like a Sean Tucker, right? Bigsby could even fall into that next range, that 205 to 208. It wouldn't really shock me. I do think he projects out to be a weekly starter, though, John. I think he can be a solid running back 2-3 for fantasy football at the next level. If he gets in the right spot with volume, I think he can produce consistently. I don't know that he has the ceiling of other running backs in this class, and that's why I'm comparing his fantasy football value to David Montgomery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he lines up pretty much exactly where David Montgomery lines up right now in my dynasty value. And that's somebody who, if he's the lead back, he'll get 200, 225, 50 touches a season. He'll produce. He'll produce week in and week out. He'll get some big games, but he'll be a pretty steady producer. And John, with all that context in play, I'm going to have some solid exposure to Tank Bigsby. Definitely somebody I'm going to be looking to pick up on my rosters, even though in terms of consensus, it seems like he's a little forgotten about. I think after the NFL draft, we're going to be talking a lot more about Tank Bigsby. But John, we're talking NFL draft. We're talking rookies every day in the Rookie Big Board Discord. You're going to want to make sure you get in on that. Head on over to patreon.com/rookie big board, just $3 a month, and you get access to all the other resources that we talk about as well. As always, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.